if I am somewhere in I don't know, small village in England and or Africa or wherever, if I know that I can have access to something for free, which can allow me to sense data, understand more about the environment, that immediately kind of implies that I can take the responsibility for whatever is happening around me.
Okay. So quite different kind of approaches, which is interesting. So I got fired up about this after reading a book called Abstract Hacktivism, and it was quite interesting. The authors were focusing on hacktivism as this idea that was not restricted to computers and technology, but that it was more a social, cultural, political approach to taking things into one's own hands and being a part of a community. So, as Gabriella said, joining a number of, being part of a larger group as concerned with, a specific thing. And one of the outside of computer-based and technology-based environment, they brought up this idea of fan fiction being a form of hacktivism, or other kinds of political activism that are out there. Of course, they talked also about the technology dimension, but one of the things that was really quite profound, or at least I thought it was profound, maybe others didn't, was they looked at it as a way that hacking and making, and they talked about hacking and making more from this idea of, a more conventional idea of hacking, which is repurposing technology for different purposes rather than the cracking kind of more criminal dimension of it. But they were talking about it having that hacktivism and any kind of exploration of open source communities and maker cultures would revolutionize or be revolutionary in terms of our culture and the future. So I wondered if the panel could discuss, what makes this movement revolutionary, or what makes it different from the past? What makes it, do you think it will have some long-term, vast implications, or is it just another kind of, collective activity? Who wants to talk about it? Okay, Valentina.
We have to turn it on again. Yes. Actually, I remember that in Japan, after the earthquake, some people built up a small device that was able to analyze the quality of the air, the quality of the water, and they found out after a while that the quality of the air and the water was worse than the data that were delivered by the government. So this movement, so they created from scratch using an Arduino and some components, this device. So this device was able to say that officially that the government was lying. So in terms of revolution, I think that the fact that everyone can build something that can tell the real truth, so that can deliver some genuine data about the environment, for example, could be really revolutionary and can promote the innovation and the progress as well. Because if we can share, all of us can share our data, actually we will have a big picture of, for example, what kind of disease will be more common in certain areas. So maybe like giving up a little bit of privacy, we can have more efficient way of living and enjoying life. So maker movement can allow this kind of new way of percepting the reality and the truth. So
there's a sort of an empowerment.
Exactly. So I don't think it's just a trend. Maybe the maker fairs are more like show and tell. They're more impressive because there are some great effects, some great devices. It's more entertainment rather than research. But on the horizontal level of the common user, it could be very innovative and empowering. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Valentina on that, and it's you're right that the Maker Fairs is more of like a kind of showcase of
Show and tell.
Yes, and there's the fun kind of entertaining side as well, but also there are also quite important projects that came out of Maker Fairs, and of course in Africa as well, but also in other countries. So, like for example, last year we did present at the Maker Fair in London Changeify, which is a network of people who are they're using tools to change their neighborhood in South London. And social media, but also there were people like the Restart project, where they are very interested in electronic waste, and they are looking to get more people, to make them aware of electronic waste and try to map like e-waste data in our homes, for example, or. We've seen how makers, start from DIYers to becoming entrepreneurs, for example. So there's this thing, or like an example of technology will say that we started with making kits for helping people learn how to make, and because of course it's a powerful way of, a powerful learning tool as well. But how they grew to become like a big company as well, and just sell these kits apart from, just doing the workshops. So, and there are many other examples. So, for example, in Greece, there was this future library network when during the economic crisis, of course, the libraries were suffering, they were closing down, and then a group of people, they started to, this maker space, were starting to train people to become makers, librarians. So there, these kind of maker libraries, like future libraries started popping up around Greece. And of course, British Council is a maker library network as well, which is in Cape Town, and of course there's they've started, I think there's maybe one or two in the UK, but it's spreading out. It's a big network of just making tools in libraries and learning, but also reading as well, and gaining new skills. So yeah, there are many examples like that, and I don't believe that this is a trend. It's something that can really change things, and communities are using open source tools to change their neighborhoods, but also their communities and environment, etc.
Great, thank you so much. Online ladies, any comments?
Sure. I think that I also agree with what they said about accessibility of these tools, allowing people to sort of dive in sooner. I think that what I've seen so far, and I guess what I predict, I can talk a little bit about that. I feel like Arduino and sort of what started as this sort of little hardware item that allowed people to easily plug in a USB to a computer and then the hardware itself has actually changed the world and allowed so many people to surpass or get over the initial barrier of prototyping. So I think it's made so many more people, kids, adults, people who couldn't necessarily get started before, so many people be able to start to make things and get over a barrier to entry because that barrier dropped so low. And I do wonder, now that kids and young people are actually taking a much more hands-on approach to learning, I do wonder how that will change in 20 years in industry, and industry is sort of accepting this mentality of just diving in and doing and not necessarily doing all things in software simulations. So, what I haven't seen is I've still seen that a very small percentage of people are sort of makers or hackers or tinkerers. I don't see like my mom hacking into her iPhone and getting a modular phone. She's still a consumer. And so I still see a small percentage of people who actually want to take that next step and hack something open and make it work. So I don't actually see also tons of innovation and distributed manufacturing happening. I see many more people being able to prototype. I do wonder, like I said, the long-term goal is that there will be more innovation, more manufacturing, and not just prototyping. And maybe this will change as more kids get their hands on hardware and electronics and coding. So let's see.
Great, okay. Any other comments? Anyone from the audience? Any comments or questions? No? Okay, so I feel that we're getting close to winding up. I have one other question, I think, because we've covered some of the questions and topics that I wanted to cover. I'm thinking, I mean, this does have quite a political dimension, and I'm wondering, Gabriele kind of pointed to the fact that we're not as far along. It's not like revolutionizing us quite to the degree that perhaps some people believe it will, and maybe that's still to come. So the political dimensions that I was interested in was like, what happens when we all have 3D printers and laser cutters and Arduinos and et cetera, in our homes, and we're making our own products? Does that put the companies out of work, or do they come up with new strategies of selling more stuff to us? What are the economic impacts, the political impacts, the sort of larger cultural impacts? Are they, what is the future do you see? Any one of you?
Yeah, I wonder if I can actually comment on that. There's this concept which was coined by Toffler called prosumer, which is producer, consumer. I think that we're actually, at the moment, living in this time. I don't know in terms of economy what will happen in the future. Obviously, I think that there is a lot of questions regarding the current state of affairs. But I don't know, maybe, because of kind of open source culture, the fact that the knowledge is generated so fast and so much of it, maybe that will be our currency. And in the end of the day, we as those prosumers, or the new generation of prosumers, and people who kind of want to make and produce things instead of just buy and consume, they will just need to have a new toys to play with and new fields of knowledge to play with. And maybe that will be where the things are going to go. The companies, they won't be selling anymore, but they will be providing or selling access to the new fields of knowledge, just an idea.
Okay. The other thing, yes, I agree with Kasia, but also the other thing is that it might be that the maker movement and all these kind of and tools that now maybe bring us like to a different relationship with companies, with like manufacturers hardware as well. Maybe it's a more transparent thing. Maybe we understand, because if we understand more making and things through making, then we probably perceive, understand more kind of the environmental impact of, making as well. And so, we might be able to have more of a say in kind of things like that in the future, or maybe influence more manufacturers as well. So, or maybe have a different relationship with how we consume things.
Well, in my opinion, there is also another problem, which is the kind of business that the open source movement can move and can start. Because some companies, for example, I worked with Little Bits, I collaborated with them, and the microcontroller, so the mini bit, the PCB is open source, so anyone can start and build his own bit. But actually, the magnets are under copyright. So if you want to build up your little bit, it's not so easy, because you should ask to the company the magnets, and then possibly they will release the kind of the magnets that you require. And as far as I know, they're not very open about like open source, because of course if you give away all your technology, you don't gain any money. So in terms of long-term perspective, because maybe they can buy your kit, but after they can do their own bits. So
But
they're
perhaps that leads into what Kasia said. Instead, they're selling their knowledge rather than
Yeah.
their kits.
Yeah, but
they're opening up certain things, but not other things.
But in the future, they have to consider this kind of problem. So maybe some companies are not very willing to going open source just because they're afraid of the fact that they can lose part of their manufacturing, for example. So I don't know if in the future all of the companies are really willing to revolutionize their own business, but maybe in the future they will.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how the saturation of the market
Exactly.
happens and if they're going to get left out or not. Yeah. Any thoughts from anyone else? So there was one other dimension. Oh, did you want to say something, Nancy?
Oh no, it's okay.
There was one other thing I wanted to bring in, and that's the accident of me bringing in only women into this panel, and it was somewhat of an accident. But I really wanted to get people who had something interesting to say, who are also artists and connected to the conference, digital research in humanities and arts. But perhaps people can comment on your experience being a woman in this environment. I had a bit of a chat with Gabriella about this last night, and Nancy as well. Is there a different perspective that women bring to maker open source culture that you see, or is it just all people sharing information?
I think definitely. Collaboration.
I can't quite hear you. I don't know if you're is it too close to your mic or not. Try again. Sorry.
In terms of going across particular knowledge fields, being able to migrate and work dance across them and not feel trapped inside particular fields of knowledge, but opening them up, I think the female collective brings that.
We can't quite make out what you're saying. Sorry, Nancy. It keeps dropping out.
I'm going to plug my phone in and plug it.
Okay. Sorry. Maybe someone else can talk while she plugged in. Anyone want to go at this question?
No, I'm just going to say something probably contradictory. I can't really talk about male perspective difference. I grew up in the series of sailors with a bunch of men. I never had any kind of. I never felt inspired between gender. So I really don't care actually. I don't know if it's important at the moment. I think that the most important thing is that we're humans. That means we have certain things to tackle, and let's get on with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I never really thought about it until I guess I come from a similarly I've done a lot of things where there have been many men around and me, and maybe that has meant that I'm comfortable to be in an environment like that. But I do wonder if I have heard some women complain that computer science is a hostile environment, or sort of like the Hackaday sort of conferences, or like that they are like scary and very full of like bros, and so I think that I've had comfort to be involved in these sort of like professions and environments where there have been a lot of men, but the place where I noticed it the most was in a business setting, and that was when which is in the arts and even engineering. I didn't really notice it then when working with one guy. It was me and Cesar. I was the COO, he was the CEO, he is the CEO, and just I felt that for the first time I noticed that he had more of a voice, people would look at him, and for me I think that was a big learning experience to just raise my voice and talk more, not let myself be quieted down, but sort of use the men I was around in order to allow me to have a voice through them if necessary, and then have my own voice. But that was the place where I noticed it the most, in sort of the more entrepreneurial side of things.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, oops. Okay. Yes, going back to our programs, yeah, it was from organizing hacks, and that's where we found it always quite, difficult to engage with women and bring in women. Also because, just if you are advertising for a hackathon, then you know that the majority will be men who will respond to that, and that's why we kind of thought very much about how to, when we organized the climate change and fashion hack at the Vienna, it was also, we wanted to bring this idea of wearables and making and fashion as well as a way of getting more women involved, and it actually worked. And we've been trying to do that with other hacks as well, with games hacks as well, or with the Space Apps Challenge. So always trying to just make it, just bring in more women, just to facilitate events, but also to make it, more easier for women and to take part in events, because they perceive, the majority of the people of the visitors we work with, the audiences we work with, they just perceive, this field as a more male-dominated, which is true actually in some cases, yes.
Okay.
And I worked a lot with children, and I noticed that the girls are less brave and less willing to try and, put their hands on the prototype they're making rather than the boys. So it's quite complicated to tell them just be creative and get your hands dirty and start making things. So I noticed this gender difference, except for some exception, actually. But girls are less brave, less willing to try. And
so maybe the changes in the government, in the schools will make it a big change without a big impact.
Exactly. Especially with the new generation, because we can make a change now, unless it will be too late. But I noticed this kind of big gender gap between girls and boys. Yeah.
Okay. And that doesn't matter if it's open source or not.
It's all across.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, just as a concrete example, if you look at all the recent Wikipedia art and feminism events around the world, trying to just add particular histories of particular women scholars and researchers into the Wikipedia repository, the actual gender balance is completely uneven.
Really uneven.
So, just as an example, I do think that it might be an anomaly, like there's equality information.
Sorry, you're dropping out again. Sorry.
But in general.
So I think, sorry, you're dropping out. I don't mean to cut you off, Nancy, but we still can't hear you very well. All right, so is there any other thoughts or comments, or before I close this up, we need to let everyone go for lunch and such? No comments, thoughts? I mean, there's so few of you. I want to almost ask you individually.
That's great, thank you.
Great, okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists, and thank you particularly for Gabriela, which is 2 or 3 in the morning in North America, and she's up with us. So thank you, everyone on the panel and everyone who came to our panel, even though there's other interesting topics going on in other rooms. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
That was some audience. I could hear some clapping.
Yeah, there's some audience.
Oh,